And I'm sure that there are people who, if that's, you know, the mental toll of that must
Massive,
be huge.
especially if you haven't talked to anyone.
Yeah, people who live on their own, who've been on furlough for that length of time.
Yeah. But if you also, if you've had no connection with your business or organization, I think that's very isolating.
I remember going on maternity leave, and when I went on maternity leave, I was so just like, yeah, I'll be back. I'll be all over it. Don't worry about it. I'll be just, I'll be back at my normal, how I was before I went. It'll be amazing. Had a baby, realized it doesn't quite work like that. And kind of crawled back to work 9 months later with like no confidence, and having been out, and I'd done keep in touch days, I'd kept in touch with my team throughout. There'd been a massive redundancy program in the middle of it, so I'd had more interaction than I would have done. And yet I still had so many psychological challenges to overcome to get back to the confidence level, and not the competence level, because nothing had massively changed in that time, but just to feel like I deserved to be there in that position. And that's 4 million people that have been on furlough that will have that exact same sense at the same time. And that's massive.
But even I think, yeah, I can imagine that the people that have furlough, but also the people that just haven't interacted with many people throughout the lockdown, and to be thrust back into an office with everyone again. And yeah, I don't know, it's very interesting actually what it's going to be like and what it will throw up for people. And the it's going to be a psychological minefield.
Yeah. So what would you recommend that a business did to start thinking about how they could mitigate for that?
Well, I always think a business is made up of people, firstly. So what are the people who are in charge or responsible for other people going to do? And I suppose it's kind of, I mean, there's a before and after, isn't there? There's the, what do they call it, BC, and before COVID and after COVID. But I kind of think it's allowing autonomy, in a manner of speaking, for people about how they come back into work. And whether that's at the beginning, they only want to do 1 day a week, or they just want to test their toes in the water, or whatever it is. Because I think there's the journey to work as well, as in the public transport, if that's what people have to do. And that would be the frightening thing for a lot of people, I think. Because whatever about your employer trying to look after the premises, you have no control at all over the buses or the trains or whatever. And I suppose people have gotten to know how they work and how they behave and how they interact. So allow them to bring that back in. Allow them to have their own unwritten rules. And maybe as a manager, you sit down with your team on the lead up to it, and you ask them these questions like, what would you like to do? Now, maybe everybody wants to stay at home, and that's not proper and it's not going to work. But then I think then you bring in, it's a bit like the 80-20 rule, isn't it? Well, we want you to be either at home 80% and in the office 20% overlapping, or we want you to be, we'll give you flexibility 20%. I don't know, but there has to be a meeting in the middle, probably. There's some compromise on both sides, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about anyway, isn't it? We do need to compromise to be able to get on and work together and collaborate and so on. But I would actually ask people what they want. Now, if you have 25,000 staff, but you still have people who people report to. And does it really matter if one team do it one way and another team do it another way? And what it might throw up then for you is that some of your people are not good people managers.
Surely that won't come out of this.
if you let people decide how they're going to work, there'll be some teams who really shine and get straight back into it, and whatever hybrid way they decide to do it, because they'll be doing it the way they know that they can work together well. And there'll be bunches of teams that are killing each other for want of a better but there'll be tension in the system, and not healthy tension, because tension's always good too, but not a healthy tension. So that, I think that's what I would be doing, is I would be trying to figure out, I'd be giving team leaders and team managers and leaders and whatever you want to call them, the autonomy to go out and figure out how their team is going to get back to the new normal. With some, there still needs to be some buy-in to what the company wants. And I think a company that says we're bringing everybody back 100%, like it or lump it, then you have to make a decision yourself whether or not you're happy working for people like that, because I certainly know I wouldn't be. Now, it obviously depending on the sector, but then they wouldn't have been out all this time either. So, and I suppose, unfortunately, I think we'll be in a bit of an employer's market for a while, as well, as things swirl around, and people will leave jobs because they're not happy about how things are. I think it's going to take us 3 years to come back to a kind of new normal in the workplace. And not because just of COVID, but I think it's a bit like a revolution that's going to happen. We've had almost the War of Independence, which allowed us to work from home and gave us a bit more freedom and autonomy about how we structure our days. And now there's going to be civil war as we get back together and figure out how to do this properly together.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy, actually, because it is that, there will be the tranches of certain types of businesses who will really struggle to get their head around the fact that people can be productive and creative and work just as well. And some teams can't, some people can't, some people desperately want to get back into the office and want to be around people again and want to get out of their house and have that routine and what have you again. But then there's a lot of people that, want a different balance. And I think you're absolutely right that organizations that lay out, this is how it's going to be and there is no other way, I don't necessarily think there'll be a mass exodus overnight. But if you look at 6 months on and you look at their turnover rates, I think you'll see a massive increase in people's, because people do want different things. People have understood that there are different ways of working and better ways of working, and the amount of collaborative tools that are available and the amount of different ways that you can liaise with people, and the fact that you can work with a team on the opposite side of the globe.